Can IIFYM and tracking macros help with eating disorders? Yes, it can help. Here's the problem with when we're talking about bulimia, anorexia, things like this. These are systems of control. If you're going to put your fingers in your throat and force yourself to vomit, what you're saying is, I don't really care about doing things a healthy way. If you're going to starve yourself, anorexia, and you're just not going to eat, you've already established the fact that you don't care about what's healthy. You're not putting yourself first. You don't want to prioritize your health, and you don't want to learn new systems and new methods that will teach you how to do things the healthy way, the right way, and prioritize your health and your life. You just don't care. You want a quick fix. That's what you do. That's on the surface. Much deeper, it comes down to abuse. It comes down to a misunderstanding of feud. It comes down to your place in your family dynamic, your role in your family. It comes down to your abuser, perpetrator. It comes down to you as a victim. There's a lot of things emotionally, mentally, psychologically going on with somebody that gets to the point that they choose bulimia or anorexia. When it comes to tracking macros, will it help? It can. It can if you are recovering from bulimia and you've already addressed your emotional needs, your mental, your spiritual needs, psychological needs. If you're already on a path to recovery from an eating disorder, then yeah, it can certainly help because it will give you a path to follow. That is, that you have guidelines. All right, here's the guides. As long as we work on opening up those guidelines over time so that you know that I don't have to be this strict, because when you're forced to really follow a very thin line and walk a very narrow path, it kind of sets you up for failure because you're holding yourself to a standard that you might not yet be able to adhere to. As long as you're addressing, again, your emotional, mental, spiritual, and even sexual abuse, verbal abuse, things like that, these are super important things that if you don't start to heal from, no amount of tracking macros is going to help, because you're only addressing part of the problem. You're more or less addressing a symptom rather than addressing the cause. And so start with therapy, start with 12-step programs, start with proven methods to recover from eating disorders. If that requires treatment, it does. If that requires Overeaters Anonymous, it does. If that requires Alcoholics Anonymous, then it does. As long as you're working the steps, working a program, doing something to heal yourself, working with a counselor, working with a group, having a support network in place, some sort of system that keeps you accountable to yourself, to health, to the ideas of recovery from the food addiction or anorexia, eating disorder, whatever. As long as you're on that path and you're actively pursuing it, and only then would tracking macros be beneficial addition to a recovery program. But to rely on IIFYM and tracking macros on its own, I would argue not the best idea for recovering from some sort of either food addiction or an eating disorder or some sort of emotional-based disease, addiction-based problem. Eating disorders are not too dissimilar from alcoholism or drug addiction or sex addiction or gambling, things like that. So there's protocols that work. Tracking macros is just another system that helps you stay on a path. But if you haven't addressed all of those other things, then your mental stuff and your emotional stuff, eating disorders are going to come right back. They're always going to be coming back, and you're not going to have real systems to combat those. You'll have a real system to follow, but the chances of you following it are going to be much less if you haven't addressed the big problems. So yeah, if you're on a road to recovery, start tracking your macros. But if not, then you have some more work to do.